We need a borderless continent. We need a continent with one currency. We need a continent with one parliament, which has got teeth and it will bite and hold the executives in countries accountable. And ultimately, we need one African president. We need United States of Africa. We supported and we continue to support those ideals.
Hello brothers and sisters, I hope you're all doing fine now. I'm sharing this video of Julius Malema, one of the most outspoken leaders in Africa and those few leaders in Africa who have always stood for the truth. Now, Julius Malema is confronting the West and he's saying the West must leave Africa alone. The West must leave black community alone. And this is the time for us to acknowledge and unite as people of black descent. So let's watch to this very powerful speech of Julius Malema that has pissed off the Western countries and they are getting very angry, including Elon Musk and Donald Trump. So let's watch this video, then have a quick discussion at the end of it. Thank you so much.
Of brother leader Gaddafi. We are following in the footsteps of those leaders. We are not saying they were perfect, some of them, but there are a lot of teachings that come from our leaders in the continent which we can follow because we think they will unite us. This thing was a one thing called Africa. This was one thing. It was divided by colonizers. These borders are artificial borders imposed on us by colonizers. Why do you want to behave like you are owning colonizers' properties? These borders are colonizers' properties, they are not ours. Let us go back to African unity. We want one voice, one Africa. We must stop doing away with African hate, which was instilled in us by the colonizers. When you say, hey, there are too many Zimbabweans here, there are too many Nigerians here, hey, you are doing the work of the devil, which is to divide Africans. Be angry with Nigerians and South Africans for doing crimes, the same, Zimbabweans, the same way you are with South Africans who commit crimes. They must be treated the same. It must not be because it's a Nigerian, it's a more crime. If a Nigerian kills a person, that killing is twice. As if the murder by South African is lesser than a Nigerian murder. It's wrong. Crime is crime. Let's deal with it as crime. When it is a white person in South Africa, undocumented, he's called an investor. Not only a white person, including Indians and Chinese. These Guptas didn't have proper papers yet. These Guptas didn't have proper papers. No one dared called them Kwerekweres. Donald Trump is not saying anything we have not heard from white people in all the hearings. I even commented and said, I'm still to meet a white person who support expropriation of land without compensation. So why are you shocked? I see leaders of the EFF and everybody responding to Donald Trump. I don't have time for nonsense. I expected this. And more backlash is going to come. If South Africans are not ready to expropriate the land because they are scared of sanctions, they are scared of backlash, then don't vote for the EFF. Because you vote for us, we're going to expropriate land. And Donald Trump will come for us. And Britain will come for us. And the EU will come for us. I said this throughout my life in the movement, that for everything good comes the pain before. If you're not prepared, South Africa, to take the pain, then forget about the land. Donald Trump has not said anything extreme. Things are still going to come. I hope the Zuma group in the ANC, which is supporting this thing, they know the consequences. We know the consequences. We know that the first response will be killing. They will kill us for that. So we know that death is the first price we are prepared to pay. The second price we are prepared to pay for this land is poverty. They will close taps. But if there is a conviction, and not sloganeering and public opinions, then we must be prepared for everything. It's a war. We must be prepared for Donald Trump and all of them. We're not scared of them. We remain unshaken. Actually, we are more determined after the Donald Trump tweet to expropriate our land without compensation. There is no white genocide here. It's an absolute rubbish to say there is white genocide. There is black genocide in the USA. They are killing black people in the USA. There is black genocide here in South Africa. Black people are being killed all the time. A farmer has been sentenced to life now recently for having killed a farm worker. Imagine if it was a black person sent life for having killed a white person. It will be news all over. But this black person was killed and a white farmer sent to prison for long time in jail. It's once off reporting and it's done. There is no scientific evidence that points to any white genocide in South Africa. It's not true. And we're not scared of such things. We're not going to be distracted by anyone. Only death will stop us. Not Trump, not poverty, not sanctions. We have all of them in our mind. We know the consequences of what we're asking for. We know it. And it's not like we're going into this thing without knowing the consequences. So AfriForum is the embassy of the USA. If you want issues to reach USA, go to AfriForum. Then you shall get a proper response. But otherwise, AfriForum is nothing to us. We're not scared of AfriForum. We're continuing business as usual. Not that we're not these Twitter revolutionaries who say all sorts of things about Donald Trump. If you were to say to them, all of them, let's go to the US embassy, none of them will come. They tweet from their comfort beds with bed heaters. So we are on the streets. We're fighting this thing on the streets. We are on the picket lines. That's why we're not shaken. We know this is what people want. And if there is anyone who's in this thing without knowing the consequences, then you are in the wrong place.
Now imagine an Africa that is united, an Africa where all Africans have the freedom to do business or work and travel all around Africa without needing visa and possibly a passport. Well, that is the vision and mission of the economic freedom fighters leader Julius Malema, should his party win the general election here in South Africa on May 29th. Well, dumelang sanbanani demadekwane and welcome to Africa Diaspora News Channel. I am Larato Machi from Secunda, South Africa. If you are a returning subscriber, thank you very much for gracing us with your presence once again. And if you are a new subscriber, a very warm welcome to our family. Now, do remember to like this video and also download the Africa Diaspora News Channel app on Apple Store and Google Play. Now, without wasting any more time, let's get right into the stories. Now, EFF leader Julius Malema has outlined his party's mission and vision should it win the election on May 29th. And one of those visions is to see a united Africa, an Africa where all Africans have free movement all around Africa. They have the freedom to do business, to work, and also just to travel and learn about the African continent without needing a visa and possibly a passport. Now, if you were to look at the African continent and the history behind its separation into countries, that began during the Berlin Conference in 1884 and 1885. So that was only the partition of the African continent was only done so that European countries would not have to fight over which country colonized which African land. So that might have benefited those countries, Germany, France, and Great Britain, but it has caused conflict in the African continent. So Julius Malema is now saying that if Africans work together, we can actually make magic. And here's Julius Malema explaining more about seeing a united Africa.
I want to know which foreigner took a job from who, because you are here, you are the anchor of the SABC. There is no foreigner who can come here and just take your job and say, from today I'm sitting here. The bosses would have allowed that. So the bosses are white monopoly capital which owns the South African economy. Is the one that brings foreigners into the country, give them jobs because they are going to pay them lower wages. And then from there come to South Africans and say, these people are taking your jobs, and then they make us fight. But Sakina, since when have other Africans never worked in South Africa? Because this Johannesburg was founded by a Southern Africa, not South Africa. That's why the language Fanaka law exists. Because these people came from everywhere to come and mine this diamond that we're enjoying and gold we're enjoying today in Gauteng. So they met from Mozambique, they met from Malawi, they met from Zambia, Zimbabwe. They came together, they couldn't hear one another. They even developed a language called Fanagalo. EFF was not there when that was formed. So it's not true that this is something that is happening for the first time. It has always been. But why would you say, I don't support colonialism and support colonial borders? That is hypocrisy. If you don't support apartheid, you don't support colonialism, you cannot support the invasion of everything that came with these people. The borders were imposed on us. We never had borders. And even without borders, we never encroached in each other's territory. We always knew that here is this kingdom, here is that kingdom. So it's unscientific to say when you do away with the borders, there's going to be an influx of foreigners in South Africa. Let's take Limpopo and Gauteng, for instance. Limpopo is much more poor than Gauteng, but the people have never left Limpopo to come to Gauteng. I come from Limpopo, and every time I get an opportunity, I go home. I've got no intention, none whatsoever, to relocate my home into Gauteng. So it's unscientific to say because people are poorer and we are in a much better, relatively stable situation, they are going to come here and destabilize us. No one wants to come here. We want you, people of Africa, if you want to go and trade in DRC, wake up this morning and just go to DRC and do whatever you want to do and come back without hassle. There must be free movement of people. There must be free movement of goods, and Africans must trade amongst themselves, because only through the unity of Africa will we earn our seat on the international table where real issues are being discussed. What will Swaziland go and tell China and say, no, Swaziland and China are equal on what? But once we bring the unity of Africa, both in terms of size of the population and the mineral resources combined, the world will listen to us. Okay. We command more than 85% of the world platinum, ourselves and Zimbabwe combined.
So we're running out of time very fast, but I quickly want to touch on the Gaza question and what's happening in Palestine, the EFF's view on this, and of course also South Africa's stance on the matter. Tell us in a minute or less, Mr. Malema.
Well, South Africa is pretentious, the ANC is pretentious. We went to Israeli embassy and said we're going to close this embassy. We went to Parliament, put a motion immediately, and Parliament passed that motion. If the ANC is serious about intervening in Gaza and making sure there is ceasefire in Gaza, why is the ANC not implementing the Parliament resolution that said the Israeli embassy must leave because we cannot share the same territory with murderers? So anyone who supports Palestine and still vote for DA and the ANC must know that they are voting for the genocide in Palestine.
30 seconds. Why should people vote for the EFF?
The EFF is the most honest, hardworking organization that will combat corruption in South Africa, that will jail the corrupt individuals irrespective of who they are, give us free education that is decolonized and make Africans to love themselves. The land is coming, the jobs are coming. It is only the EFF that can stop load shedding in South Africa, and no one else has got capacity. The DAC government in Western Cape, they still load shedding. The ANC's government everywhere, there's load shedding because they've got no capacity to stop the load shedding.
Now, adding on to what Julius Malema has said, and also talking about the conflict that is currently happening in the DRC, former President of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, has spoken about what could have caused the war that is currently taking place in DRC and what could potentially stop it. And one statement that he has made is that the true leaders that are trying to take power away from France, which currently France still has power over some African countries. So here is the former president of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, talking to students at the University of South Africa and explaining about some conflicts that are currently taking place on the African continent and how they can be resolved.
A few years back, you remember we had to work with Côte d'Ivoire, the Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire, to help them to get sorted out. And one of the things that we found was that there was an agreement with France signed at the point of the independence of Côte d'Ivoire that France would maintain a military barracks in Abidjan, the capital. And the commander of the French troops, in any situation where he felt the security of Côte d'Ivoire or the security of France was threatened, he had the power, sovereign power, a French general, to take over the public station broadcasting and announce whatever he liked. It's one of the agreements, one of the 12 or so agreements that not only Côte d'Ivoire, but many countries of the Francophone countries that signed with France at independence. Mali just now has just repudiated all of those agreements. I think there were 11 or 12 of them, which include prescriptions about when you've generated a foreign currency, bank it in Paris. And Paris, the French franc then, would guarantee your currency, CFA. Part of what is happening in West Africa, Palisa, as you can see, is a rebellion by young officers against French neocolonialism. It's not only military coups to remove some elected president, but these young soldiers are saying our politics since independence has respected this junior relationship with France. That must end. So you see the big confrontation between these countries and France. It has to do with ending, like the agreements I've talked about. That you'd have a French general based in Côte d'Ivoire who has actually the power to intervene in Côte d'Ivoire as he liked. So it's an anti-neocolonial rebellion. It has got this element, you are quite correct, of removing elected presidents. How does the continent deal with that? Well, you know, the OAU has a standard policy, as you mentioned, against illegal changes of government. So the military governments don't get recognized. But we have a particular consequence now, where Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso decide that they are walking out of ECOWAS. Now that can be a positive development. What is to be done? It's not a question that we can answer here. But I think, again, I'm trying to say, it's necessary for us to understand the objective reality. What actually is happening? It's not just young soldiers who are hungry for power and therefore remove this elected president. No. That's why they talk about Thomas Sankara. Sankara took power by coup d'etat. He was a soldier. But Sankara understood this particular issue.
Now, during the former president's speech, I had some thinking, when I look back at going to high school and primary and learning about history, it is such a disappointment that I did not get to learn about the African history. I did not get to learn about the South African history. The only thing that I got to learn about is how South Africa was during apartheid, but I never got to learn how South Africa was.
Why should the DA think that we must be the ones to promote white arrogance and privilege? Come, let them come here. They will get more than what they bargained for. By the time we finish those meetings, we'll be agreeing on a concrete program on how we're going to change a life of an African child. I'm not fighting for white people. Neither am I fighting against them. They've got nothing to fight for. Everything else they are asking for is to protect privilege. That's all they want. DA must tell me, from this coalition, how does an African child benefit? That's all we're asking. An African child must benefit from anything else the EFF is going to constitute. If the African child doesn't stand to benefit anything, the door is open.
Hello, brothers and sisters. Now, when we talk about some leaders in Africa who have always talked truth to power, now they are being hated out here because they have been saying the truth all this time. That these brothers and sisters have come out in their numbers and they are now turning around how things have been in the motherland. If you are so keen and you are following how things are going in Africa, and you've been following how Elon Musk is obsessed with Africa and his obsession with South Africa, being more specific, and to those people in South Africa who have been talking the truth like Julius Malema. Now, it is so sad to see the president, Donald Trump of the US, is always approving everything that Elon Musk has to say. Now, these sanctions are very reckless that have been given to South Africa. You can see, and this is why we say Africa should unite, that there is no anyone who is going to sanction any African country or state, because Africa will be one. We'll be talking as one nation. And for this case, it means all the resources in Africa belong to all Africans. It means the resources in Mozambique, in Malawi, all the way to Algeria, to Egypt, coming back to Benin, Burkina Faso, Angola, DRC, and all these other countries, including Somalia, will means that these resources do not only belong to the people in these given states, but they belong to everyone in Africa. So any interference by any foreign power into Africa now will cause havoc and will actually make the whole African continent to rise and speak. Now, some have not seen any president who is coming out to support South Africa. If you know whatever is happening in South Africa, and this is why Ibrahim Traoré, Dr. Arikana, Pilo Lumumba, Julius Malema have always been speaking the truth, that if you go to South Africa, the land is owned by 80% of the land in that country, 75 to 80%, is owned by the minority. I'm not saying they're not citizens of that country, but the question Julius Malema has always been asking, why should the biggest number, 17 million South Africans, be struggling with a place to live when we have people who have tracts of land that they are not using in South Africa? And this land, they cannot account for how they got it. They cannot account how the procedure was done, because they took this land from the black people, from black South Africans, while South Africans are right now suffering. So when someone talks this, then he becomes, he's being sanctioned, and they're calling them out these names like international terrorists and all this other stuff. So there is need for all the black people in Africa, for all African diaspora to come together and see whatever the motherland can achieve. Now, brothers and sisters, I do like how Julius, I've not been approving everything he says. Sometimes he can get so much aggressive, but we know that Julius Malema has been standing and talking the truth about Africa. Now, Africa really needs leaders like Julius Malema, those leaders who won't back off, those leaders who won't give up just because Elon Musk is talking, because the richest man on the planet feels like you are talking, like you are not saying anything important to them, that the richest man in the world thinks that you are not able, like you are not actually you should not be speaking about these things that you are saying. Now, because the US does not agree with whatever you say, then you are classified as an international terrorist. We are not going to accept that. And this is the time we should actually try and give support to these leaders. When we see Dr. Arikana talking about the evils that France has been doing to black people, when we see people like Ibrahim Traoré trying to do a very good civic education to the whole of the continent, that these people, that these powers are not for us, that these powers have exploited us enough. And this is the time we say enough is enough. And this is the time we should actually wake up from our slumbers and see there is nothing good that is meant for us, that everything they talk about is about them, and them. So there is need for us as people of black descent to actually come together and see the way forward for our own continent. Now, that's the crime Ibrahim Traoré, Julius Malema, Pilo Lumumba, and Dr. Arikana have been doing, saying the truth and calling out all black people to unite. And that's why they have been profiled. And that's why some of them cannot even try travel abroad. And we say it is not necessary to travel abroad. We can make Africa the Europe that people travel to. We can have all these jobs in Africa. We can have all these hospitals that people travel to Turkey and all these other nations in Africa. If only we say no to neocolonialism at the moment. If we only say no to imperialists who are coming out, building their bases, army bases in Africa and trying to capture this country. And we are saying we are not going to keep quiet. We are not going to sit and watch. We are going to do something. And we are not going to take guns and go to the street. No. We are going to say literally no. We are not going to follow their policies, and we are not going to watch as they profile our own Pan-Africanists, as they try to destabilize this continent. Because some people have been talking about the crisis in Congo. You should actually know whatever is happening in Congo, because I feel like most people are being misled. Now, before Ibrahim Traoré came to power in 2023, now, so many things had happened. Actually, when I say so many things, I mean so many things. Now, when Ibrahim Traoré took off power And the military bases, the French military bases, were all over West Africa. And there were wars that were being sponsored. There were so many rebels. Can you really tell me how someone cannot afford maybe to have food that costs around $1, but they manage to have AK-27, which costs around $50,000? Have you ever asked yourself such questions? It is because someone is sponsoring these wars. How can someone who cannot afford to have food, how can someone who cannot afford to pay a mortgage or rent, or how is someone who cannot even afford to raise his own family have $20,000 to $30,000 to $50,000 to purchase a gun to fight the government or to fight someone else? These things are done to destabilize Africa so that they can actually come out with their news on CNN, on BBC, and try to give travel bans to some regions so that it becomes easy for them to still loot, exploit Africa, because no one will be coming to watch whatever they are doing. So when they try to do all these things, and when Ibrahim Traoré came to power and he realized this is whatever has been done to our motherland, that these are the things being done. When someone like Julius Malema says, you know what, DRC is fighting with Rwanda is sponsoring the chaos in DRC because someone is behind this, and all of a sudden, the US now starts to criticize Rwanda. We know how these PR games are done. We know how these things are done, that you cause chaos, you give me the money to cause chaos in my own country. Then when some people start speaking negative about me, you also speak negative because you want to be on their side, and you still continue giving me money to do all those dirty jobs for you. Just so that no one should know that we are together. We are saying Africa should unite and Africa should be one. This is the time, black people. This is the time we should get this oppression out of our dictionaries. We should get these things that have been done to us and try to build us again. Let's try to build ourselves. Let's try to do things in a very new way that they are going to be surprised. Thank you so much for having taken your time to watch this video. I appreciate so much. And to every new member who has subscribed to the channel in a very special way by paying the packs, I appreciate so much. The membership fee is so down, and so to anyone who wants to join the channel to be getting news, please, this is the time. I appreciate all those who have subscribed to the channel and who keep on coming to watch content. I give you much respect and I don't take your support for granted. One love, black people, black community. This is the time for us to unite. See, when we have come from far, and you can see there is a lot that has to be done for us to achieve full liberation and full independence. Thank you so much. I appreciate, brothers.